Cool. Well, I'm so glad that you are here for the Alkaloid Network's Mastermind Roundtable. Today we have Mark from RescueTime. Mark, tell us about what you do and what RescueTime does.
I am CTO of RescueTime, so I sort of responsible for all the technological development. I also have a bit of an operational role because we're a small company, and so that just is like HR and nuts and bolts of business operations kinds of stuff. RescueTime's been around for about 10 years now, and we started off as a tool really focused at like what they call the quantified self crowd, like the people who track everything they do. You know, they were the Fitbit users, that kind of stuff, and we thought we could solve that problem for not just like physical fitness, but for digital fitness. So the idea is there's an agent runs on your computer or your mobile device, and it keeps high resolution track of how you use it. And then you can use that data to turn around and set goals and interventions for yourself. Over the years, we've evolved. We started doing a lot of research because we accumulated a huge amount of data. I'll say we have extremely strict privacy policies. We realize that we're working with sensitive material. But using that data for users for their benefit, we've been able to do things like identify good patterns and healthy patterns. And some of that's also just combining general wisdom from the efficiency world and consultants, but a lot of it is data driven. So we've started adding courseware and a lot of like static content to consume and evolve the product to be better at training people to manage their day, to get more done in less time. There's historically been maybe a misconception that we were like trying to have people work the most possible, and that's never been the case. What our tool is designed to do is help you work the best. And that strategy is particularly meaningful when your hours are extremely compressed by being at home with kids needing to go to their school, online school right now and all of that. So I'm making use of it myself.
So, and your target audience changed recently, right? Didn't I read that? Or you added a new audience of people?
So yeah, we've been trying to find our way out of just sort of like the quantitative, what we call the quant nerds, like people who love numbers. The easiest thing to do when you build a product like this is just to reflect the data back at people and let them make their own decisions. And we added features on top of that, but that attracts a certain kind of user who wants to do that. A lot of people don't have time to do that, or that's not their thing. They'd rather just have, like, if you think about how Apple Fitness works on your phone and that kind of those things, like they give you very light touch like suggestions, like try to get to this today, or you did this week but not last week, to make you aware. So we moved more towards that kind of model, and then alongside that, the big shift in the last 3 to 4 months has been realizing that we have this huge library of blog content that's actually in some ways well more popular than our website. There's lots of people who go to the blog and just consume the content but don't use the product. And so we thought there was an opportunity there where it's a complicated tool, could be made much more simple, and especially if you combine it with expertise like delivered by video training, could land really well. And our first experiment with that went really well. So now we're adding courseware essentially.
Nice.
So yeah, and our user base, to like ensure that privacy and guarantee people are comfortable with using it, we have offered business solutions, but typically our most successful approaches have been straight to consumer. Now, most times you mean straight to consumer, you mean somebody is using the tool outside of work. It's like a media tool or something like that. But in our case, this is like a new market of business consumer. So these are people who work in small, medium, large businesses, could be expensing this, choose not to, and just pay for it for themselves. That's typically been our biggest user base. But we are working at a solution that allows for more easily managed consolidated billing under like team accounts. And the idea there being like, you could have like your HR team could offer, here's a productivity course you can take for a month, funded by us, and it comes with this tool that you can use or not use, as an approach to teams that makes it comfortable and acceptable to people.
So, and I know that this is kind of a Q&A, kind of informal conversation. I know for me personally, the first month, first 4 or 5 weeks, I felt pretty overwhelmed. Um,
Yeah.
and everything that I was doing was geared towards shifting my how I helped my members here,
Yeah.
and creating virtual events, trying to make sure everybody was aware of those. Um, just overwhelmed at the amount of information and the fact that nobody was coming in. So like,
Yeah.
how can I help people if they're not here? Because traditionally that's not the only way that I help people, but I was pretty overwhelmed and I felt I got really behind on just my usual way of working. And I don't even have ADHD. I was just kind of all over the place and not very productive at all. And I feel like I'm starting to come back to some kind of rhythm. Um, I mean, is that common, do you think?
Yeah. So I think, one thing we've tried to hammer home in our communications in the last month is, well, I don't know if you were on it when Andy and I was talking about this, like, this is working from home for a lot of people for the first time. Um, Corollary, this is working like distributed for people for the first time in a lot of ways too. Like in your case, you're not working from home, you're working distributed because you don't have people around you. And that incurs a cost of just new technology, new processes, new practices that there's no way you're going to walk from one setup to the other setup with zero efficiency loss. Like you just have to set your goals differently. Like you're not going to get, like I would estimate that I'm probably 25 to 33% as productive as I would have been 2 months ago. And that, I'm saying that's good. Like that's a good mark to hit.
But
Um,
because your house is full of people and
yeah.
critters.
And so, there's all sorts of sensitivities around like, you can't expect the same out of people, and that doesn't make them less good employees if they have more of a burden um, in this window. So the number one lesson we're trying to get across is don't make this a judgment of what it's like to work distributed or work from home, because that's not fair. It's a very unlevel playing field. It's extremely wealth biased for one thing. People who have the resources to have a good home working environment, it's like that's a rare privilege. So just being aware of those kinds of things. On top of that, there's all the different technological tools that you use a little bit here and there that suddenly you use a whole lot more. And you have to engaging with people who had their own set of tools that didn't overlap with yours before, or only did lightly and didn't matter because it was maybe once a month. All of a sudden now everybody's got something to kind of come to a consensus on what to use to go forward. And to also just recognize that there's going to be hiccups, and that's normal too. That's, again, not a failure, it's just a reality of the situation. And that there's an emotional cost to like not physically being around people. There's an emotional cost to not having the same routine that you had. And there's just fear of the actual reality that we're in a pandemic. All these factors are just real. And so we shouldn't be measuring productivity the same way right now that we would in a normal work from home environment.
So Andy, have you noticed anything within your team like that, or yourself? Like how are you faring through this?
From our team perspective, really nothing, because we have had for the last 5 years a very distributed team work at home culture. The only time they really came in the office for the most part was when a client needed us, or we needed to do project planning or project reviews or things like that, and that wasn't terribly necessary, but it was also, we would always plan a monthly team event to do something. So right before all this happened, we had everybody in the office and they wanted to see the new office. And we went to lunch. I said, okay, with all the craziness going on, we're probably going to have to enact our emergency work plan. And they were like, well, what's that? And I said, everybody's going to need to work from home for the foreseeable future. And they looked at me and said, so nothing changes, right? And so we've been managing. We have the tools and the environment set up, and everybody's been doing that for years. to your point about not everybody changes in life and changes in stresses and stuff causes new challenges. I think it's affected us a little bit, just unknown things like Kyle, who basically runs all of our operations and interacts with all of our guys. He and his fiance left and went to the mountains for because her family has a place up there just to get away, and they were doing great. And then they had a power outage over the weekend, so he was completely offline for 24 to 48, and so, but everybody just sort of, adapted to it, sort of like an amoeba, just changed and adapted to it, and there was really no loss there. I think the biggest thing is dealing with our clients, and many of them were used to coming into a very structured environment, and they've been thrown into a little bit of a chaotic environment, or chaotic just life. Just some of them have kids, some of them were set up to work at home, some of them weren't. So they were all trying to get used to the daily cadence of the work environment that they had when they were in the structured environment. They didn't have any longer. But now that they have gotten some normalcy to that, we feel like we're getting as much or more time with them, and certainly more focus time on things that we needed from them than we did before. So we're not having the water
disruption I felt also with clients. Like,
yeah, we're not
they
having
were
that normal.
more impacted than us.
Yeah. And then one of our clients is a company called Mobilemind. It's all one word, .io, and they are their clients are K-12 educators and school systems around the country. And what they do is have created micro learning for professional development. So they're focused on teaching teachers how to use technology. And what's happened here is just been a massive boom and opportunity, because they very, very rapidly, like in about a 3-day period, came up with courses to teach them, number one, about the pandemic and about Corona, the do's and the don'ts and the hows and whatnots. And then they came up with some coursework around distance learning and distance education, and have continued to expand that now into how to take advantage of the CARES Act for garnering some of this federal money for helping with distance learning and distance education. And so this has been a boom for them, increased the valuation of the company by about 50% overnight. So I think that is going to be the new norm that's out there. They had certain of their school systems they'd been talking to that were talking about creating a pilot group of 30 or 40 teachers come on and say, overnight, we want 5,000 teachers on, and they're going to be taking every one of your courses by next Wednesday. And so it's been a bit overwhelming for them.
Do you guys must have a fair amount of internal engineering resources, I would guess. I was curious, like in our experience, like the general process of business development and strategy and all that stuff, that seems to be working quite smoothly. In fact, it's been in some ways a bit of a boost for just like having a lot of group Zooms where we brainstorm and like project plan and come up with new ideas. But the one thing that I know that suffers for me and has suffered for my other engineers, especially ones with kids, is like, if you're tackling something particularly challenging or working on a project that requires that sort of deep focus, like you got to get in the code for a sustained 2 hours to really make progress kind of situation, those projects are slowed down. Like we've been having a hard time because it's hard for anybody to stitch together. It's easy to do 45 minutes to 60 minutes of focus. It's extremely hard to do more than 2 hours, just if the realities of the things that you have to navigate in the house with other people in it.
So what do you suggest for people right now you say it's easy for 45 minutes or an hour, but like, what if you have to really like, I know myself, like just working on a marketing plan or writing a blog or something like that. Like I can't just sit down and like do it.
Yeah.
I have ideas, but then I need that focused time for, I don't know how long. Sometimes it takes a couple hours before I can, feel like I'm in a, get into a rhythm and really produce something valuable.
So
How did you do it? How did you do it previously?
Well, I didn't do it here because my day here is generally very disrupted. I'm giving tours, I'm answering questions from members, I'm just all those things, receiving packages for members. So typically what I would do is I would have an idea and I save those, but then I would write on the weekends or at night because it was the only time I could actually have that.
Pretty much my answer for people who have like disruptions in the house is readjust your day. First of all, accept that you're probably not going to get it done, but then also just, if there's a particular block of work you want to get done, you can, if you can just get that window, pick a window of day where it affects everybody the least. And that's usually going to be early in the morning or late at night. And then my corollary to that is like, it's okay to not be available in the middle of the day in order to get that thing done later.
Well,
that's
I think
what
it depends on
members of kids end up doing. That seems to be the only, like, unless they have a partner who can 100% take control for 2 or 3 hours, that's what they have to do.
I mean, before I started Alkaloid, I have a daughter, and she was, I worked from home, worked remotely for a larger company, and there were 2 of us in the house doing that. And at that time, the house was much, the previous house was much smaller. And if we both had calls at the same time, one of us had to be in the bedroom with the door closed because we could hear each other.
Yeah, that's where we're right now here.
And I knew that anything after 3 o'clock, after the bus came after school, anything I could get done after that had to be like kind of light duty, because I would go get her after school, and she was pretty good. She was like 8, 9, 10. She understood that, mom was on the phone or mom was working, but they're kids and they're still going to come.
And they need attention, Right.
So at that time, again, you have to adjust. I made sure that I did the things that required my undivided attention and really focus earlier in the day, because anything after 3 o'clock was just a wash.
That's a typical pattern right now. I mean, before this, that was my pattern. I would like 9 a.m. to noon or 1 was my deep thinking block of time.
Yeah, I've been that way for years. If I don't, anything deep thinking or writing, I have to do before 8 o'clock. I'm a very, very early person, so I'm usually up by 5 or so, and 4:30. And if I don't get it done by then, my mind starts wandering about everything that's during the day. And then one thing I've found, though, is if I'm having one of those extremely distracted days, and go exercise for an hour, then come back, and I typically can capture another hour or 2 of focus time then.
I think that's a very key observation. Like, that's one of our number 1 recommendations is, and our tool will show you this, like if you start feeling yourself thrash and you're jumping around between all sorts of different things, if you just go outside or to put your eyes on something like totally non-digital and get in a space where your brain just can wander, it really resets and you come back. Yeah, 100%. Like for me, that's like a 1 p.m. jog. I come back and I can get like a solid another bound of concentration through.
I think in the afternoon, my dog starts hiding under the bed because she knows that I'm about to take her for another walk.
She doesn't like to go for a walk?
Oh, she does, but not 4 or 5 a day.
our app, it has this what was a tool actually called Focus Time that like when the problem is your level of distraction is like media related. So, and this definitely affects some people right now. It's like, I got to go see what's on Twitter. I got to go see, the temptation to like try to stay up to beat to the latest is pretty significant. So specifically for that problem, our app actually has tools that like, you can say, okay, don't let me do that for the next hour and it'll block you from doing it. So that's an example of a technology solution to sort of force you to reset what your brain wants to do. But I think realistically, a lot of people's distractions right now are not on the computer, they're external to the computer.
Yeah. On your apps and stuff, have you thought about tapping into the APIs that are in Slack and creating a Slack app just to monitor the chatter that's going across the channels to pick up on, distractions and, just wasted time that's going on out there?
I mean, our app, it right now. So what we've sort of made a commitment. We're never going to mine page content and sort of chat actual and like the actual contents of the chat would be outside the purview of what we'd allow ourselves to look at. It's also you would need a plugin to do that. You can't do that through system APIs. We try to make our app as light touch as possible to get installed. So that means the data it gathers is going to be from accessibility interfaces the operating system offers already. So that's going to be like window title, app name, that kind of thing. But a surprising amount of data is contained in those things. So we can tell like which chat room you're in and stuff like that. So you can actually see if, the premium version breaks it out, you can see, oh, you spent a third of your day in Slack and, 2/3 of that day that time in Slack was in like this channel that's not, that's like the fun channel or whatever.
Yeah. I've been reading some things, some corporate things that are out there just talking about monitoring, not individually monitoring, but having some AI monitor the actual threads of chats that are going on out there so they can see or pick up on things like the pirating of intellectual property, or seeing if employees are recruiting others outside of the business and stuff like that. And I think it's getting into, there's been some fairly vociferous discussion about, are you impeding on someone's privacy there? But the feedback has always been, it's a company issued resource and it's company issued tools and their own company paid time. So we should have the ability to monitor that. Now, I don't know, I haven't thought through how I feel
pretty
about
opinionated about that, as am I. We're targeting like successful, well-paid knowledge workers. And like, if you're, our theory is if your business trusts its employees so little, you have far deeper problems.
I agree 100%. That's where I come down.
Yeah. And so we basically, when people come to us, we get asked for that a lot, as you would imagine, because our technology would provide a way to like suddenly funnel that for hundreds of thousands of people into a mine. We allow ourselves to mine like patterns of cohorts of people spending X amount of time in this app or that website over time. And so that's sort of the limit of how far we'll mine. We never go into any page content. The technology can't even do it. So our thinking there is like, actually the employee is the company's, like, it's a privilege for that company to have access to that employee's time. The goal for RescueTime is to help the company get the most out of that time, but also to help the employee get out, do what they want to be doing the most. So, maybe one week they want to work 60 hours, but we can help them do that in a structured way that doesn't burn them out. But the corollary is we also are adamant about helping them have a week where they work 20 hours and get enough done. So yeah, I'd say like we've had research and companies come to us asking us to do things like that. And, there was a version of our team product years ago that allowed managers to see the day layouts of employees, like what it looked like. Right now, our team product, you can only see team totals. You can never see an individual's data as a manager. Individual data is only reflected back at the individual. The old version there was a team product that let the manager see what every employee essentially spent their day doing. And we realized that what happens in that model is the customer base that's attracted to that, we could compare that customer base to our like consumer version. Our consumer version had like Microsoft and Google employees and Facebook employees. And that version had call center employees. It's like, wait a minute, they want to pay $1 a seat. These guys laugh at our price and would pay 10 times for it. So which customer base do we want more of? Granted, there are a lot of call centers in the world, but it was way easy to scale our size business on the higher value customer base. And to do that, we had to not sell the other one because they would go out, you know, their manager might come and say, oh, we're going to try this out. And then they'd go look at us online and they'd find that and be like, oh man, this is like a spyware. So we basically killed that.
Well, and
decided to go full privacy.
I have, you know, I mean, we have a Slack channel here at Alkaloid, and I think I'm the heaviest user, but because I love Slack, rather than email and, you know, just back and forth and stuff like that. But I've had some people say to me, well, I don't like the distractions. I don't like getting the notifications. And if I turn off all the notifications, then I forget to go look at it. It would be nice if you could turn off the notifications by channel.
So,
or, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, there's pretty fine-grained controls, but I guess I've not looked into that. We, you know, careful settings of Slack are like an ongoing challenge, and we've evolved a set that works for us. I mean, we have like, you know, like Andy, we are distributed, so we have to basically live on Slack and Zoom to get anything done.
right.
And in order to make that notification management, that's going to be a challenge. I don't know how Slack is going to solve that, but like, you know, I have the Alkaloid room and I have the RescueTime room. Obviously they have different like needs for what my involvement would be in them. And so they need separate management for notifications. So, you know, you asked Andy if we had a plugin. We actually do have an integration with Slack that sort of speaks to that a little bit. Like we have a tool that as you're working, when it can tell that you're starting to focus on what you've categorized as your productive stuff. So this could be, you know, any number of apps that you use, but that you flagged as matter to you for getting stuff done. It will automatically flag you as unavailable and turn off notifications in Slack. And then when you leave that mode, it will turn it back on.
Okay.
That's super cool.
Yeah, I like
I
that.
haven't advertised that feature enough, but we're working on it.
That's really
awesome.
So let me just, as we're coming up on the top of the hour here, I mean, some of the things that you talked about, you know, structuring your time so you have focused time, or scheduling your time with, especially right now with the other people in your home, so that you have that structured time so you can focus, and, you know, maybe use the tool as a technology solution to help you focus. Oh, there was one thing you mentioned that I wanted to ask you about. You talked about audible distractions. I mean, how do you deal with that? Because, I mean, like, even just like, oh, I have a message, you know, like I get a ding,
Yeah.
or there's an email or whatever, like, or there's a Slack message. How, on top of the cat and the dog, which we saw the cat earlier, by the way, Andy, before you got here.
So I guess I manage that through different degrees of isolation. Like I'm pretty adapted to tolerating quite a bit of that. First off, like with regard to how it affects other people in like a Zoom room like this, I try not to worry about it and just understand that right now people's realities are different and you can only manage so much with noise. And different people's space restrictions will dictate different possibilities there. But I basically retreat to farther and farther corners of the house, depending on how much solitude I need. And I generally leave all of my devices with sound turned off and then just watch for the badges. And then I've like arranged my icons and apps in such a way that I don't want things to badge that I don't think are like things I want to check in on every now and then. But then, this is a classic time management strategy, and probably all like already aware of it, but like you're much better at getting things done if you time box it. So, yes, you see that you have an email or iMessage or whatever, go do that in a batch and don't stop doing it until you clear it out. So that like the idea there is it's better to do 15 to 20 minutes of email and messaging and then go back to what other thing you were doing for 45 minutes than it did to do 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. You're going to get much more done. So by turning off the sound, it allows me to be good at that time boxing strategy. And that keep, for me, the number one thing that does is keep email from taking over the entire day, or Slack.
Yeah. And then lastly, you said if your brain is, flailing, go exercise. Or, here at the office, it would be lovely to go out on the Beltline now, except now you can't go on the Beltline now.
Yeah, I've gardened a lot in the last month.
Well, there's a couple people here who every day around 2:30, we go for, a 15-minute walk. And it's nice. It's a nice, get up from your desk and come back and be more productive. So now I'll just walk somewhere else instead of the Beltline. Any other questions, Andy?
It's not about this topic, but I just had a question. I think you just answered it. So we can get into our office if there's some things we need to get.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
I checked the shelter-in-place order does allow for you to get mail or packages if stuff is coming here, or if you need to get stuff out of your office to work from home. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
I will probably come out there on Friday and get some stuff then.
Well, I will be delighted to see you.
6 feet away.
Mark, any last tidbits for us?
It did occur to me, I just said one last little thing, which was, given all I said, I still don't really ever have the ability to stitch together 2 to 3 hours of focus. So what I've been doing is when I try to structure the work, I really try hard to break it up into pieces. So like, is it really 2 to 3 hours, or is there a way I can make this like a collection of 3 smaller tasks that are an hour? And that's what I've been doing.
Yeah. I agree 100%.
Having a plan, it's interesting. It's just having a plan makes a difference, because if you have a plan, then you can start to break it up into pieces.
Yeah.
Anyways. Well, lovely. It was lovely to see your faces today. I'm so happy to see you. I miss you guys.
Thank you for working into arranging everything that you've been doing for the last couple months and before that, of course. But.
Well, hopefully this won't last much longer, and we can see again soon. I hope. And thank you for being members here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for all you do.
Have a lovely day.
Thanks. Be well.
You too. Take care.